now. Every week we've been sitting on my bed and having a conversation about something we want to talk about. And this week we're going to talk about changing the words in older books.
So this is episode 149 of the follow-up Dad and Daughter series. So the podcast is called The Follow-Up, and you can listen to it on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. We have been up on video on Vokal, but we're no longer up on Vokal, so we're going to put these on YouTube. And we've put some on YouTube, just some clips, but nothing recently, because honestly, this is just the two of us having a conversation. And I do need to figure out some of the audio uploading for Apple Podcasts and Spotify and others. So it'll be up on YouTube first, because that's what I want. That's what I know how to do.
But
the
you
easiest.
might not see it on Apple Podcasts or Spotify on Monday.
Right. It usually comes out every Monday. But so in order to get these on YouTube, you can just hit the subscribe button. And I'm going to try to put up a whole bunch of older episodes also.
Yeah.
So we've been doing this. We started it at the very beginning of the pandemic. And I had been doing a podcast, just myself and with other friends, called The Follow-Up, where just ask a question and then follow up based on that person's answers. Just a short, thoughtful, entertaining conversation to prove that you can actually have one just by listening. You were a guest a few times. And then when the pandemic started, we decided to do this together. And the folks at Vokal were so kind to continue to post it with video. And that's what we're going to continue to do. Yeah. So this is episode 149. So if you're watching this for the first time, you can go back and listen to all the other podcast episodes on Apple Podcasts. You can just subscribe there, subscribe here, and
if you want to
do all that.
See some just clips just before, get a little inside look about what some topics we might be talking about, you can look at some clips that we posted on YouTube. And
so topics that we've already talked about, not that we will be talking about.
But you can, on Apple Podcasts, you can give us some suggestions about some topics you might want to hear our ideas on, or just us talking about.
Sure.
And just any comments you have.
Great.
Questions.
All right, so we're going to talk about the continuing conversation about language in books being changed over the years. Classic books, Roald Dahl books, and others.
Roald Dahl.
Yeah. So I know you've thought about it a bunch. We've had varying conversations about it, and you do a lot of reading, and we do a lot of reading together, and we always have. So there are times when Mom and I have read books to you at different ages that we've thought, like, maybe we shouldn't say that, or maybe we shouldn't say that. But what we do is we read it the way how we handle it as parents. We always let you know in the very beginning, and then we'll get your thoughts on this, how we handle in the very beginning. Say, we take a look at what year was this published? And then we say, oh, wow, like, what else was going on around that time? And then as we read it, we would ask you, do you think that would be something that would be written today?
Right,
or why would you think it was written at that time? So it's kind of like a history lesson as you read the book.
Like, I remember Judy Blume books written like, I'm talking about Fudge right now, written in like the 70s, I'm pretty sure. 70s, early 80s. Like, one thing that totally wouldn't be written now, that does not need to be, it might, but does not necessarily need to be changed, but wouldn't get written now, would be, I remember one of them was talking about how their friend got mugged in Central Park. Like, that probably would not be written right now.
I mean, it might be. It might be.
You know what I mean.
But they might not want to write it now, but, I mean,
it might.
It still happens.
But,
Yeah, I know what you mean. So how do you think about it as an 8-year-old, a 3rd grader? How do you think about the whole topic?
About what? Changing the words,
Yeah, it's the topic of this conversation.
Changing the words.
Yeah.
No, I meant changing the words, or like...
Getting mugged in Central Park?
I don't think so.
You've been in Central Park a whole bunch. We live here. You've never been mugged. No. All right, just making sure. Okay, go ahead. So your thoughts on the whole topic.
My thoughts on the whole topic. Okay, so I think it's not something that I think should happen a lot. Well, that should be happening really, that the public hears about. It also depends on, I think, what they're changing.
Mm-hmm.
Because some things authors write just to make the book funny, and just sometimes just like how they describe character,
Mm-hmm.
but then they change it because they don't think people should be hearing that, and then they just change to something that's like blank, like not
It's
fun.
not, maybe it's not as descriptive, or it
Yeah.
might not be as entertaining.
But
I also think it's up to the reader and parents also to decide, I don't know, what your child is reading, just like what they're watching on TV, and but how that there are sometimes when words are used in books that we would then stop and say, and not to use that word because of these are the ramifications.
Right.
Of it. Yeah.
Also, why are you changing them? Because if you don't like some topics, maybe, or some like things that are happening in the book, if you don't want your child to read that, or your child doesn't want to read it, they don't have to. Might be to other people's interests.
Right. There are a lot of
It's your choice.
There are a lot of books. There are a lot of books.
There are so many books. It's your choice of what you read. You can just read another one. So easy to find.
Mm-hmm. And because certain things may have been acceptable back then, I think it's again up to parents and teachers to discuss. Well, this is what was going on in the world. This is why this was written. This is why it was written like this. Like, we have lots of conversations about the stereotypes of Jews.
Right.
We have a lot of conversations about the stereotypes of African Americans, of women, and of this is what a woman should be doing. We talk about this stuff all the time, to the point of where when you're reading books, you can now separate. Like, whoa, that's pretty crazy that they wrote that. But that was what was going on at the time. And as you read more and more books now, they're more reflective of the time. Like, there are so many more books now that are inclusive.
Like, let's say you don't want to read that book
which is great.
Right, which is great. But maybe you don't want to read this book because of, non-inclusive or something. Mm-hmm. You don't need to change the book. You can just find another book that's more inclusive.
Right, exactly.
Also, if you're going to change a book, you don't need to get the public into this. You don't.
Yeah, unless you're changing the whole story, because I do think things get changed. Sometimes it's like republished. Books are reprinted or republished, and there might be tiny little changes in a book, but I personally don't think you have to point it out, because then it becomes this major topic
major thing,
and it turns into something bigger than it should be.
And probably books getting changed, it's not really something I need to know.
No, it should not be a priority in this country.
It doesn't need to get into something bigger than it is.
Right. We don't need this going in front of the Supreme Court. They've got enough to figure out.
Is this is probably going to go?
No.
Well, book bans.
Well, yeah. I mean, but that's. Again, that's outrageous.
I don't know why
why
Supreme Court.
Why governments are banning certain books. I mean, look, books that promote hate speech, but the fact is, these days, that there are so many different states that claim hate speech to be something that it's not, that's a bigger problem.
But they're banning books.
They're banning the Roberto Clemente story.
Seriously?
In some places.
Huh?
Yeah, exactly.
Why? They're banning the girls who in certain parts of in a part of Philadelphia. I saw it.
Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania. Yeah, it's
not Philadelphia.
Pennsylvania. They banned the girls who code books. Huh?
Right. That's a different conversation, and that's absurd.
Different. But
yeah, that's absurd.
It relates.
So you do a lot of reading.
I do.
Are there certain books, and we've had past episodes you can go back and watch or listen to that with your own book recommendations?
Yeah.
What are you reading right now?
Let's see.
Or what have you just finished?
I just finished a book about Jackie Robinson. It's called The Hero Two Doors Down. Yeah.
Yeah, we haven't really talked about that. I'd love to hear more about it.
Okay.
You'd gotten that as a present, and then...
Yes.
Then we did them, and then we recently went to the Jackie Robinson Museum, which we did a whole episode on.
Right.
Yeah, that was.
You could also go back and watch that.
What are you going to read next? Do you know?
I don't know. I think I have to figure that out today.
Have you finished all the Nancy Drew books you have?
I don't know why I just said that, but I think so.
I
think so.
All right. Well, I'm glad that we had this conversation. Continue to have conversations. Yeah. This is going to be our first full episode on YouTube.
Yeah.
Which means I need to now edit some of the graphics and put the music in.
Music? Oh, right. You need to put the music. Oh, you need to put the graphics.
I know. Ted at Vokal did so much. I've got to do this now. They were so helpful, and they were great.
Wait, do you get to put in the New York City skyline now?
I guess so. Well, I don't know. I honestly don't know. I haven't looked at all the assets yet. So maybe this will be bare bones. I don't know. But either way, I'm glad we had another conversation.
You'll still get to see the podcast.
So this is episode 149. So you can subscribe to the YouTube channel. You can go to Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. I think just Apple and Spotify, actually. And subscribe there and listen, rate, review.
I need to.
Love you.